Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. My name is Katie Walsh, and I'm one of Penn Foster's early childhood education instructors, and I'm excited to be hanging out with my good friend and colleague, Sarah Owens, this evening, and we're so excited to be here with all of you. It's our final session for today as part of Penn Foster's Student Success and Career Fair of the spring of 2019. So tonight, we're going to be talking about tips and techniques for student success in online courses, and we want to share very early on. We recognize that the title of tonight's session is very similar to some other sessions that are being presented. I know that there were some sessions on student success and study tips and how to be successful in online classes that were presented earlier today and later this week. You'll see that Sarah and I are kind of taking a very relaxed, hopefully very informal and fun approach to the conversation that we're having this evening. But we do have some serious information to share with you. So before we get started, we want to quickly welcome you, and we also want to make sure that everything is working appropriately. So we're looking at an advancing PowerPoint presentation. On your screen, you're looking at the sample image of GoToWebinar's control panel, and you have the ability to open and close that control panel when you click on the orange arrow. When you open the control panel up, you have access to a questions box. So if you would please access that questions box at this time. And just let us know that, first of all, you can see the screen and hear our voices, and also share with us a little bit of information about who you are and where you're from, what program you're currently enrolled in if you are a Penn Foster student, and why are you here this evening? Why are you hanging out with us? What are you hoping to learn and take away from our conversation? Please know our session is being recorded, and you are going to receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording as soon as the session ends. So while it's really great to have a notebook next to you, maybe you have the ability to take some notes, you are also going to get a follow-up recording, so you don't have to scribble notes furiously and try to write everything down as the session is happening live. Please also know anything that you're typing into the questions box coming directly to me and to Sarah, so you have an expectation of privacy, of confidentiality, and that no one else is able to see what it is exactly that you are writing to us. And it looks like everything is working very well for us. So welcome. It's so good to see you all here this evening. So I want to introduce, as I said, my good friend and colleague, Sarah Owens. She has some really great information for you this evening. And this is Sarah.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be here this evening with all of you and with Katie. We always have a really great time presenting together. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself, kind of my background. I am one of the early childhood instructors, like Katie mentioned, and I have in this program, I'm sorry, we cover the associate's degree, our CDA credential prep, the child development training, any of the career school, the high school pathways, and the college programs for early childhood education. I do have, and if Katie can advance to the next slide for me, I have some experience not only working here at Penn Foster, but also working in a child care facility. I'm also a student, so I can completely relate to a lot of the things that you're working on. I'm currently working on my master's degree, so when students call in for tips and tricks, I really like that I can relate exactly to what you're going through, and share some of the tips and tricks that I use myself when I'm studying. And these are just some pictures of my background. I used to be a preschool teacher. I'm a mom. So I'm really glad to be here with you all this evening.
Thank you, Sarah. And as I said, my name is Katie Walsh, and I'm the other half of Penn Foster's Early Childhood Education Department. So some of the advice sharing with you this evening, again, comes from my role, my work here at Penn Foster as an instructor in the online courses, and then some other professional experiences as well. So that's a little bit of background information about us. This is usually the part in the webinar where your presenters take time to dazzle you with their impressive resumes and really impress upon you how they are true authoritative experts in whatever topic of study it is that they're about to be presenting on. And so Sarah and I just want to share too with all of this that we also are continuous learners, like Sarah said. She's currently working towards her master's degree. We are always open to learning new ideas. Sometimes it's our students who give tips back to us. They'll call and they'll say, hey, I just want to share this is a strategy that I've been using and it works really well. And we love being able to have that information and share it widely. So that's kind of how we came to this conversation this evening. So our objectives moving forward are that we want to know that you're walking away from tonight's conversation with some additional study tips, study hacks, and we're going to talk about the importance of social study as well, even in online courses and online classes. Our agenda this evening, we're going to begin by recognizing that there are some benefits and, yes, some challenges as well to being a student in an online course. We'll take a little closer look at some very specific learning styles, recognizing how important it is to know your own individual learning style so that you can make it work well for you. And we'll take a look at something called Cornell Notes, which is a specific style of note-taking. And then we'll really get into some study tips, study hacks. I think you'll find some interesting ones there. I'll kind of tease you a little bit and say we're going to be talking about Play-Doh and perfume and gummy bears. Probably not the things that you would expect us to be talking about this evening, but that's okay. And again, talking about how important it is and thinking about how important it is that even though we sometimes feel isolated or we sometimes feel alone in this online study or online classroom, recognizing that social study is such an important part of our work and our success. Along the way, if you have questions for us, we would love to hear your questions. We'll stop in live time and ask questions and answer questions. If you have thoughts, if you have feedback for us, definitely share those. Sarah's going to be manning the questions box for the majority of our conversation this evening. But before we really get started, here's what else we want to offer to you. We want to talk about our goals because we're coming into this conversation this evening having some very real, very tangible goals, and we hope that you do too. Sometimes we participate in webinars or sessions where we don't necessarily always identify our goals, things that we necessarily want to learn or take away from the conversation. And I found that when I sit down beforehand and say, okay, this is what I want to learn, this is what I want to take away, that I am much more on task throughout the conversation or the presentation. And also I hold myself accountable to make sure that I walk away with something specific learned. So our goals for you this evening, we know that the ideas we're about to present, you're not going to be able to apply every single last little idea. We're hopeful that you might find some that you think, oh, this is really great. I can't wait to try this technique immediately. You might find some strategies and tips and techniques that you think, yeah, okay, maybe that'll work a little bit. I might need to modify it according to my environment or my schedule, but okay, I can, definitely give that a try. And then we're probably going to be talking about some things this evening that you're thinking, nope, sorry, ladies, no way is that going to work for me. And that's okay too. But our goal is that you learn something about learning, at least one point, one takeaway that you could share with someone else after our conversation ends this evening, just about learning in and of itself. Our second goal is that you walk away with 2 study tips, techniques, strategies that you're ready to implement in your real world work. And our third goal is that you learn 3 study hacks. And those are the easy ones that we'll talk about at the end. So think for just a moment. You can even share with us in the questions box some goals that you have for yourself this evening as well. And as you're doing so, we're going to talk really quickly about the pros and cons of online learning. So, of course, we're a little bit biased. We think Penn Foster is wonderful. We think that online learning is wonderful. And there are so many wonderful benefits that come with online learning. There also are some challenges. You're all here for a reason. It's because you want to exceed in your online courses. So, Sarah and I appreciate you. We applaud you for your efforts and your determination and your interest. We're really hopeful that tonight's conversation offers some innovative ideas and practical suggestions, tips, techniques, strategies, hacks that you can immediately incorporate into your study practices. So getting started by acknowledging and recognizing the advantages and the limitations of studying online. So there are typically, I guess we could say, maybe 5 benefits to why online learning is so important and also is so advantageous for many students. So savings. Typically, students pay less in online college and career courses than they would at traditional brick and mortar schools. Not only paying less for the courses and textbooks, but there's also additional savings in terms of transportation costs like gas and parking expenses and saving time too, because you're not commuting to and from a college campus or looking for a place to park. Flexibility is another benefit. more flexible class schedules accommodating your existing commitments, such as family responsibilities, parenting responsibilities that you have, work schedules, if you're a member of the military, if you're working odd jobs or odd shifts. So the flexibility can be really desirable for students who are physically unable to commute to campus, also due to some type of health limitation or rural housing locations, jobs that require continuous travel. And we know that online courses really do offer minimal life interruptions. And I think another thing we can recognize too is accessibility. So this one kind of goes without saying. Your coursework, your study guides, your webinars, your discussion boards, your exams, the Penn Foster community site when it comes back, even textbooks for some programs are available online. So this means you can complete coursework wherever you are, whenever you're ready with secured online access. We know that online courses offer variety. Online schools offer programs of study that aren't always offered in a local brick and mortar school. Online courses can give you the opportunity to connect with people, classmates, instructors from all walks of life from all over the world. And obviously, this allows for an exchange of cultural and social information that we might not get, in a regular brick and mortar setting. And finally, self-pacing. So as we mentioned, here at Penn Foster, you don't have to interrupt your regular life, your regular schedule to join an online career, college, or high school program. You can study at your own pace, at your own convenience. You can complete your course whenever you're ready to do so, but also recognizing that managing online courses increases organizational skills, it does improve your overall technological expertise, both of which look really great to a potential employer, but it doesn't mean that everything is always, sunshine and smiles, and we recognize that there are some challenges as well. So in order for us to work towards reducing, improving these challenges, we have to be mindful and honest about what they are. Sometimes limited personal interaction can really be a disservice for students. Online courses don't offer face-to-face interactions with classmates, peers, with instructors. And because that interaction is really done online in the form of emails, chats, discussions, sometimes webinars like these, that lack of social relations can be really tough on some people. You could, sometimes find yourself spending more time with people online than offline. And that's a challenge too. The environment, establishing a supportive learning environment, you can definitely work in the comfort of your own home, but you need to consider, is your home environment the best place for independent study? Are you going to be able to make time and find physical space to study without distraction? Do you have the support, the backing of your family, roommates, people who are going to respect your time? Will chores and home responsibilities and other personal obligations get in the way of your work? So how can you create an environment that's most conducive to online learning? And finally, independence. And this, I think, can kind of be both a pro and a con. So typically being independent is a really positive feature. Just a minute ago, we were talking about how these online courses offer a lot of benefits that are unique to individual students, such as flexibility. But this also comes with a drawback. Online courses typically require independent study and comprehension skills. Instructors sometimes are only available to you at a certain time. That time that they're available might not be, the best time for you. You will have to do a major portion of the coursework by yourself, and this requires a really fair amount of self-motivation and discipline without putting in enough work and effort. Obviously can present a lot of significant challenges. So that's why we're here tonight, is to recognize that there are positives, there are negatives, and the fact that you're all joining us this evening means that you are the students who are really motivated to do very well in your courses overall. So we're here to support you, and we know that you can do this. And one of the easiest ways to get started is to be able to determine your learning style. And Sarah has some really good information that she wants to share with you about individual learning styles.
Thanks, Katie. So what we're going to talk about now is what's called the VAC or VAK learning styles model. And this was developed by psychologists in the 1920s. And what it was developed for was to help students and learners classify the most common ways that they learn. And so the V stands for visual learners, the A stands for auditory learners, and the K stands for kinesthetic learners. And each of those means that people who fall into those separate categories learn best in very specific ways. But when you're thinking about it in real life, a lot of times we mix and match these and we'll use multiple modes to be able to really retain the information that we're learning. So with the visual learners, and that's the V, those learners absorb and retain information better when it's presented with visuals. So things like pictures, diagrams, charts, PowerPoint presentations like this, they're able to they need to actually visualize the material, they need to see it, and then they'll be able to retain it better. So visual learners remember 75% of what they read or see. And then with our auditory learners, those learners prefer to listen. So they will be able to um, listen to a lecture or speak with an instructor or a student and really be able to understand the information that's being presented. So the auditory learner must hear things for them to have the best chance of learning. And using this modality is the most difficult way to learn new material. So some things you can do are like studying with friends, so you can have those conversations and really talk through the information that you're studying and that you've learned. If you're learning a brand new topic in class, you can have a little sit down and have a whole conversation so that you can make sure you really understand that topic and what was discussed in class. You can recite out loud the information. So this might sound a little bit silly if you are standing in your bedroom and talking out loud to yourself, but for those auditory learners, this is how they're going to best be able to retain the information. And you could even make your own tapes. So this could be really helpful if you're in a busy city where you have a longer commute to work or to school, or you spend a lot of time, let's say, on the subway or on a bus. This could be a great way to study while you're commuting or while you're doing other things. You can put in your earbuds and be able to listen to yourself talk about those really important points that you learned from class or your notes even. So, and that's going to help you retain that information as well. And auditory learners tend to skim through and look at the pictures, chapter titles. They'll just look at those really important cues within the reading material. They're not necessarily going to read word by word through the material. They like to read out loud whenever possible, though, because that's going to help them retain that information. They're actually hearing themselves say the words, and then they're internalizing that. And they like to set a goal for their assignments. If you say your goal out loud each time you begin your work on that particular assignment, it's going to help you stay on task and then to achieve that goal as well. And then the K is for our kinesthetic or tactile learners. And these are our learners who need to do to be able to understand and retain the information. So they need those physical hands-on experiences, whether it's rewriting your notes or physically manipulating materials. That's how they're going to be able to retain the information. So they actually have to physically do what's being taught to them in whatever way possible. Getting information from written materials or by listening is not very easy for students who are kinesthetic learners. They have a very difficult time retaining the information in those formats. Sorry, Katie, can you go to the next slide?
Yep, let me see.
No, you're good now. I think there's just a little bit of a delay. Sorry about that. So to help our kinesthetic learners, when they have to read through materials or have those conversations to be able to get the information they need for their courses. Sometimes things like pacing or walking or sitting in a rocking chair and being able to actually move their body can help them as they're reading the material or they're listening to someone speak. I personally am a kinesthetic learner. and I have a very difficult time reading through chapter material in a textbook. But I find that if I stand and I kind of pace back and forth while I'm reading, I retain the information much better than if I try to sit down and just read the book. So I have to be physically doing something with my body to help me retain that. And you might not study best while you're at a desk, like I said, sitting down, being very still, lying on your stomach or back. You could instead try sitting in a comfortable lounge chair or on cushions, bean bags. You can try standing, pacing back and forth. You'll be able to better retain that information. And when you're trying to memorize information, try closing your eyes and writing the information in the air or on a surface with your finger. Or something that I always found very helpful was after class, I would rewrite my notes because I'm physically writing them down. I tend to remember them much better. And this is not to be confused with multiple intelligences. I know that many of you have probably heard of this, Gardner's multiple intelligences. So there are obviously more than three, and we each have our strengths with multiple intelligences. But the VAC learning styles model focuses specifically on visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners and supporting them in learning how to best retain information when they're learning new concepts or in a class or studying for exams and trying to retain that information.
Sarah, I'm sorry to say that our slide deck, I think, got a little bit stuck before. So, ironically,
Mhm.
for our visual learners, if you don't mind, I just want to go back and let me see, because I think that we didn't have the opportunity to look at all the slides for our visual learners. So, if it's okay, if I could just
Yeah, of
put that
course.
information, I'm just going to do it this way. So, I think we did this one, visual learner, and then just wanting to share these as well.
Yeah. Thank you. So for our visual learners, some tips that you want to think about are writing things down that you want to remember. So that's giving you that visual that you can go back and look at and read through. So you might find it helpful to jot down the most important points from a textbook chapter. That way you have them there and you can read through them multiple times, especially when you're studying for something like an exam. And looking at the person who is speaking to you, it's going to help you focus because you tend to look at their mouth as they're forming the words. And it's giving you that visual stimulation while you're listening to what they're saying. And you want to try to work in a quiet place, wear earmuffs or earplugs if you need to, because that's also going to help you focus. Sometimes our visual learners can tend to get a little bit distracted if there's a lot of noise and people around them when they're trying to learn because they're drawn kind of to what's going on over there. So it can be helpful to kind of drown that out, what's going on around you. And most visual learners, they learn best alone. So doing group work, studying having a study group or a study partner might not be as helpful to you. And when you're studying, you might want to take many notes and write down lots of details. Um, when you're a visual learner, you tend to want to have that visual material to go back to whenever possible because you're not going to be retaining as much of the information as you take that are trying to take in through the auditory when you're actually in the class or in a lecture. And before starting any assignment, set a goal and write it down. That way you can read that goal. You could write it right at the top of your paper in big words so you know exactly what your goal is, and that's going to help you focus as well. And before reading a chapter or a book, you can preview it first by scanning the pictures, headings, and so on, so that you kind of have an idea of what you're going to be encountering throughout the chapter. And it's going to give you a brief introduction before you really dive into the content of the chapter.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm sorry those slides got stuck. I'm just going to advance all the way
No
back
worries.
to where we left off. And one other thing with this, actually, Sarah and I were curious. So if you could please, in the questions box, did you did you just learn about a learning style that you think really applies to you? Some of you were already identifying. Some of you kind of knew coming into this conversation what your typical learning style was, visual or auditory or kinesthetic. Some of you already know, what type of intelligence you have, Gardner's multiple intelligences. For those of you that this is new, did you recognize a learning style that you think, really applies to you? When Sarah was speaking, or, when she was describing the learning styles, did any of them really jump out at you and you think, oh, yeah, this is me. This has got to be what explains, how I study or how I work? One other thing with this too, it's also important for us to recognize when we're looking at those learning styles, it doesn't mean that we learn exclusively and only through one learning style. It's more of a preference than anything else. So some of us, we're heavily visual learners, but we can also learn through our through auditory and kinesthetic senses as well. Or if you're an auditory learner, it doesn't mean that visual learning has no appeal or no place in your life. It just means that you tend to naturally benefit more from those auditory experiences than visual or kinesthetic experiences. So mentioning that, so that we never want students to say, well, I'm just a kinesthetic learner, that means that I can't learn through visual or auditory experiences. Of course, anyone can. It's just recognizing that we have preferences. Sarah, are you finding, do we have a lot of people who are identifying?
They are. Um, there were quite a few who said that they're also kinesthetic. Someone right from the start said that they are a visual learner. So it's really good to recognize these things about yourself and to understand what your learning style is so that you can support yourself and really advocate for yourself for how you're going to be able to retain the information.
And that's so true too. I think in times where we're working with other students or working with an instructor, it's okay to say, this is the learning style for most people, but this over here, this is the best way for me to learn, and take that approach and advocate for yourself in that way. Um, I love these responses coming in. Wonderful. Okay, so we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit. We're going to talk about taking notes. Sometimes students, I do want to answer one question that came in really quickly. So, and I'm going to go totally off topic, totally rogue here for just a quick second, but a student or a participant this evening asked a question, and it just reminded me of something that I wanted to share. And unfortunately, I didn't think to put it into our slide deck this evening. So let me find that question and answer it. So there's a question here about studying for exams. It's a Penn Foster student, and studying for exams is really time consuming. How do you move swiftly through the exams while still getting good grades? Something that Sarah and I do in early childhood education, and for those of you that are current students in ECE, you'll already have met with us, and we do new student orientation webinars. In our new student orientation webinars, we talk with students about some general test taking strategies, and one of the things that we do is identify keyword and keywords in exam questions. Sometimes when we're doing this, students are sharing that they struggle with identifying a keyword or a keyword. So specifically to your really good question about how to move through exams quickly, and I'm so sorry to say that I didn't build this out in a slide, so let me just kind of take this moment to share that a lot of the success in taking multiple choice exams comes back to being able to look at the test question itself, that STEM, and not necessarily looking first at the answers, but looking at the question and identifying the key word, the most important word or the most important phrase that question is about. Exam questions, the first word in the question is not always going to be the most important word or that key word. And so if you have textbooks or study guides, especially with textbooks, you can always identify or isolate the keyword. Use your index in the back of your book. Look up that keyword in your index and help it to use that to help you find the information within the textbook, so that you're not going page by page by page through the entire textbook looking for the answers. So I'm sorry I didn't build that out, but maybe we can talk a little bit more about that offline or a little bit later on. So you certainly, please, if you have questions, share them with us in that questions box. I just wanted to share something that I came across. It's not something that I learned how to do when I was in school. It's only caught some buzz. Well, it's been around, I guess, for a while, but I first became aware of this about 5 or 6 years ago. It's a note-taking style called Cornell Notes. And looking back, I wish that I knew about this way back when. I was the type of note taker that when I was taking notes, I tried to record every single thing the instructor or the professor or the teacher was saying. And I, sometimes had to really learn how to discipline myself to not write everything down. In the Cornell note taking, it's a really cool way of taking a piece of paper and dividing it into three sections. So you have your notes section, and in this note section here, you're taking notes during class, but you're only writing down the most important keywords or the main points, the bulleted points. You're abbreviating this information here. And then you're coming back. After class, you're giving yourself a couple hours or a day. You're going to come back and you're going to write a summary of the notes that you took. And your summary is only going to be maybe 2 to 3 to 4 sentences. You could do this at the end of a webinar. You could do this at the end of a chapter, whenever you're taking specific notes. And then the third part of the Cornell notes is over here. So in this column, it says cues. I like to think of this more specifically as questions. So if you're familiar with the game show Jeopardy! Jeopardy asks the questions, and then you have to come up with, I'm sorry, Jeopardy gives you the answers, and then you have to come up with the questions. So that's kind of how this cues column works. You could write, I'm sorry, these are written soon after class, but you actually write, the anticipated exam questions, or you can write the exam answers. And this helps you to, try to predict what's going to come up on a test, or to be able to at least go through your notes really quickly and be able to retrieve information. So there's some really good information online, and I just wanted to mention it to you. There are websites and videos that explain Cornell notes so much more eloquently and efficiently than I just did. So, but if you're interested, definitely do some research on this. It's something that I just kind of stumbled across and wish that I knew earlier, so I wanted to share it with you. So, Sarah and I have some kind of serious study tips and techniques that we want to talk about before we get into the really interesting and quirky and fun stuff. So just going through some general study tips, Sarah, maybe what we want to do is just kind of alternate, or we can just kind of jump in. So just mentioning
Mhm.
really quickly, and so we talk about this with all of our students, learning in an online course is like anything else in this world. When it's new in the very beginning, it can feel the most challenging. You can start a course and feel like, oh, I'm never going to get through this, or I just can't do this. I'm not cut out to be a student, or I'm not cut out to be a student in an online course. And we want to recognize how important it is to stay positive and to identify that, yes, there are going to be challenges. Yes, there are going to be setbacks. Yes, there are going to be things that I don't understand, or, I really want to get straight A's, but I know I'm going to have an exam score, grade, or paper, where the score is less than I wanted it to be. And having those minor setbacks doesn't mean that we can't have positive attitudes. So I think it's really important for all students to always focus on having that positive attitude, even when things are not necessarily positive, and also working on developing a growth mindset and moving away from a fixed mindset as well is really important.
It's really important too to establish a routine. Especially when you're doing online school, it's very easy to push things off and to, I don't necessarily want to say procrastinate, but that is kind of what we can do. I also take online classes, so I can completely relate to this. It's very easy to say, well, I'll do that later. Right now, I'm trying to do this. So it's important to set a routine for yourself and set specific times that you're going to be working on your schoolwork. And you can say that right now I'm in class or I'm in school, to put yourself into that mindset that this is when you're doing your schoolwork. And something to help you with that, is maybe to set aside a specific time every day. It could be the same time. You could write it down on a calendar. You could set reminders for yourself too, so you don't forget. And another important thing is to make the people around you aware of what time you have set for yourself and what your routine is going to be, so that they don't make plans that they want to include you in during those times and don't disrupt your learning. I think that's really important too. I have a family that I take care of, like that I have and I'm taking care of. And so I have to say, even with my and my children, right now I'm doing school. So I'm going to sit at my desk and this is my schoolwork. I need an hour. And then we can do something else because otherwise it's very easy to push those things off. So you just want to keep that in mind, and encourage others around you to hold you accountable, to yourself and your schedule. Use them as a support system. It's always important, no matter what you're doing, to have a support system in place, and to help you stay on track and keep yourself accountable.
And like Sarah said, being able to say to yourself and say to others, I'm at school right now, even though I'm at school in an online school, still clearly marking that time and that space that you need for yourself and for your coursework. So another really great way to kind of support this idea is to create a study space, separating a workspace from other responsibilities and distractions. Wouldn't it be wonderful if every single student, every one of us could have our own in-home classroom or our own, workspace, that it's a room where we can sneak away. It's designed exclusively for our schoolwork. Would be wonderful, but in the real world, it doesn't happen that way. So it doesn't need to be a room entirely by yourself that that you're escaping to. Just perhaps a corner in a room. It just needs to be a place where you can study comfortably and study without interruption. Also, obviously, a good idea to stay organized, to have room for textbook, tablet, internet access, and office supplies if necessary, which actually takes us into our next point, which is how important it is to get organized and stay organized. Use a personal calendar, digital planner to record important information, dates, deadlines, contact information. Be organized online on your laptop, your desktop, your tablet as well. Create electronic file folders. Save all important coursework. Download course syllabus or syllabi, for example. And keep paper files for coursework to be kept on file as well.
And another really important thing to do in taking online classes is to self-regulate, and to learn to set goals for yourself and even rewards, if that's something that you need and you want to work towards. It can help keep you motivated and help you stay on task as well. So in order to be successful, we know we have to set goals for ourselves and we have to hold ourselves accountable. So before you're starting a class, you can think about what you'd like to accomplish, both short term and long term. Why are you taking that class, or why are you taking that program? What is your end goal? Write that down. You could even have like a goal board. So that could be your main goal. And then you could set short term goals for yourself, whether it be accomplishing an X number of lessons, or requirements in the course within 1 week. It's important to set both those short-term and those long-term goals to keep yourself on track. Or think about, is there a class you want to ace this semester, or a certain grade point average you want to earn? And think about, how are you going to achieve that? Or getting included on the dean's list. That might be something that you're working towards. Or some of your long-term goals might be things like getting a new job, getting a promotion, getting a raise. So really set those goals high for yourself and write them down, and then keep track of your goals. How are you working towards those? What kind of progress are you making?
And speaking of goals, identifying SMART goals. So this is something that we hear people talk about quite often, is how important it is to have SMART goals. SMART, of course, stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely or time-bound. So these are the best types of goals where we're, very clearly identifying how specific our goals are, how exactly are we going to measure our success, how achievable or attainable are our goals, how relevant are they to our overall success, and of course, making sure that they're measured in terms of times as well. And since we're setting these goals, we know that once we identify our goals, we also want to identify our rewards. So reward yourself for your success. It's really important. We talk with students all the time and we say it's important to celebrate smaller accomplishments in addition to larger achievements like finishing a program or completing a semester. Invite family and friends and online students, to share your success with you. Important to visualize your motivation as well. Place a photo of what motivates you in your workspace to remind you of what you're working towards. Keep this visual motivation updated. Add new images as you meet goals or as you come across new innovations or motivations as well. Sarah, I'm going to move quickly through this part of the conversation because
Hmm.
I just want to talk about gummy bears. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah,
That's what
I
it's at for
know.
me.
That sounds good.
So resources as an online student, you have a lot of resources available to you. So definitely check out resources, the Penn Foster Library, textbooks, instructional tools, our Learning Center resource, trusted websites. But don't forget about human resources as well. Use your family, use us, use instructors here at Penn Foster, student advocates. Definitely reach out to other people as well and use us as resources. Recognizing that practice makes perfect. It's not easy to study from home, but it will get easier with time and repetition. We wish that we could share with you stories that our students have shared with us. Their first course or their first semester is always the most challenging. And by the end of their program or their course, because of that repetition and that practice, they really have made it perfect. So find a groove that works for you and stick with it. Start on track, stay on track. It's always better to be ahead than to be struggling at the last minute. So take big projects, big assignments, and break them down into smaller, bite sized, more manageable parts. Give each individual element a deadline. And obviously, you don't want to, drag your feet, make yourself do things on time, and you'll be better off in the long run. That's a little punny there. Limit your time online as well. So this could sound really silly coming from an online instructor saying limit your time online. But we all get, in fact, some of us were already sharing this in the questions box, we all get sucked into the trap of taking a short break, from studying our textbook just to jump on Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook or, Twitter for just a couple minutes. And the next thing you know, that 5-minute break is turned into, 2 hours. Breaks are a good thing, but it's important to get digital distractions, and get a handle on these. So you might want to apply some self-control. Self-control is a free open source application on Mac that allows you to block distracting websites, mail servers, anything else on the internet. So, download things that are compatible with your system and just set a period of time to block for. Add sites to your blacklist. And until that time expires or timer expires, you won't be able to access those sites, even if you restart your computer, delete the application, change your mind. And you can set these for limited periods of time. For the next hour, I am not allowed to go on Facebook no matter what happens. I think I need this on my phone for Twitter. Go cold turkey. This is the Windows version. It blocks websites, blocks applications. There are 3 versions. The basic version is free. Recognizing that everyone has setbacks. Every single person who has succeeded has had success, or I'm sorry, has had struggles, challenges, moments of failure on the path to meeting their goals. So when you get a bad grade, when you have difficulty, you have writer's block with starting an assignment, when you have other frustrations, realize that this is part of the learning experience as well. Talk with someone else, get their point of view, take responsibility for the work that you've done and not done, and decide to identify if there were any behaviors that maybe led to these challenges and figure out a way to change those behaviors. Make a plan for achieving success in the future will help you build confidence too. So here's what I was really looking forward to this evening. These are some study hacks, some really interesting ones that Sarah and I found along the way. And we just want to share these with you. So I was teasing you earlier about Play-Doh. Sarah, I'll go first, and then if you want to do unusual flavors next. So
Hmm.
when Sarah was talking before about visual and kinesthetic and auditory learners, one thing we didn't mention was our sense of smell. There is a lot of science, and there's science behind all of these, by the way, but there is science to prove that if you spray an unusual scent, and here's the key word, unusual, an unusual scent before you study for an exam or read a textbook or really try to, comprehend really important information. If you spray that scent just before you study that information, and then you smell that same scent again right as you're about to take the test, that scent will jog your memory. And I don't know who on earth would come up with Play-Doh scented perfume. This one totally baffles me. Although if they come up with a crayon scented perfume, that might be my thing. I love the smell of crayons. So this actually, Sarah, goes right into our unusual flavors as well.
Yeah, and when you're thinking about unusual flavors, if you're tasting those things when you're studying information, and then during the test you eat that same item, you'll be able to remember better the information that you learned and that you are studying. So bacon gumballs, I love bacon. I'm not so sure about how I would feel about it in a gumball form, but you could figure out whatever flavor it is. It could be a sour ball or a lemon head, something something that's really going to stimulate your taste buds and help you remember that information.
Bacon flavored gum balls. I saw bacon flavored or bacon scented lip gloss or chapstick the other day at the store. I don't know. So talking about low volume instrumental music as well, and again for our, our auditory learners, having low volume instrumental music on in the background also stimulates brainwaves and comprehension and memory as well. So the important thing here is instrumental, that there are no words, no lyrics that accompany the music, because when we're listening to words and lyrics, our minds, our brains sometimes have a tendency to go off task and want to sing along or think about or give meaning to the words, the lyrics that we're listening to. So, of course, it has to be lyric free, word free, so totally just instrumental music. And it doesn't have to be one particular type of instrumental music. So, as I'm talking, if you're rolling your eyes and you're thinking, oh, yeah, Kate, but classical music just isn't my thing. I'm not into classical music. That's okay. Find a different type, a different genre of instrumental music and listen to that as well. And go for the gummies. So we talked a little bit earlier about setting, very specific deadlines for some small tasks. And this is such a cute image. This person, every time they finish a really difficult chapter or section in their textbook, they reward themselves with a different gummy bear. So I don't know, I'd probably have a sugar high by the end of a chapter or section. Maybe we wouldn't have this many gummies, but certainly, something to consider as well. So identify what your tangible reward is, and then instead of having one very large reward at the end, break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces. How to get that in. Times Roman. So there is evidence to support that there are certain fonts that are very conducive to being able to speed read, to absorb information very quickly. And then we know there are fonts, there are typefaces that make it much more challenging for reading comprehension. So if you take something that is difficult for you to read, see if you can copy it, paste it into your own, Word document. When you rewrite it, copy it, paste it, but then change it to Times New Roman, something like Times New Roman or Arial. It gives you the ability to speed read and to be able to absorb and absorb your comprehension really quickly as well.
There's also a special font called Dyslexie. So if you have dyslexia, this could help you actually to be able to read more easily, because we know that can be a real challenge if you do have dyslexia. So that might be helpful as well.
I think there are others that they came. So dyslexia is one that they came up with about, I think, 6 or 7 years ago. And I know as of last year, there were one or two. We were having conversations with students and they were sharing other fonts as well. So definitely something to check out there. And note sharing as well. So sometimes I did this in college all the time. I took better notes by pretending that I was taking them for someone else. So if I made myself believe that I wasn't going to be keeping the notes, but instead handing the notes off to someone else, or that they were going to be published in some way, I made sure that my notes were much more, much more efficient, much more accurate, much more visually appealing as well. So, pretend that you're taking notes for someone else. Copy notes in your own handwriting. Go ahead and use those visuals. So color coordinate, copy notes into your own handwriting as well. Rainbow notes fires up your visual memory. Also looks pretty, makes taking notes more enjoyable. So don't be afraid to use different colors of ink, and, color coding your notes in that way as well. Online flashcards, something like Quizlet. It's community-based, so not only can you make your own flashcards, but you can use flashcards that other people are using to study the same subject. You can go in and see that they've been, oops, I'm sorry, I'm still on Rainbow Notes. And I think we have one more. So using Post-it notes as well, being able to, kind of flag what's going on. Let me check. I think we have, we have using highlighters as well for that rainbow approach. So perhaps you're dedicating a particular color, like blue, for example, important or interesting quotes, things to share with someone else. Pink, it says, could be words, dates, names, places that seem important, and so on. And I'm just going to let you take a look at this. Okay. And then we were talking about online flashcards. Sorry, I jumped ahead there. Quizlet isn't the only. There are, several different online flashcards and quiz community-based applications and systems and websites. The only thing that I think we would caution is, as tempting as it may be to use flashcards that other people have generated, we can't always verify the authenticity of their work or the accuracy of their questions. So, as a student myself, I would tend to be a little bit anxious about using notes or flashcards or quizzes that someone else created if I didn't know that person very well, only because I would want to allow for human error. And I don't know if I'm using their notes or their flashcards to study from. How do I know for sure that their answers are, necessarily correct? So this one gives me a little bit of anxiety, but I did want to share it with you as well.
Somebody just shared too in the comments that Study Blue is an amazing app for flashcards. I've never heard of that before, but she said you can even insert pictures, which that's wonderful.
Oh, that's very cool. What's it called? Study Blue?
Study Blue, yeah. I'm definitely
Oh,
gonna have to check that out.
very cool. Thank you for sharing
Another
that.
really, yeah, definitely. Another important thing to remember is to rewind and review the information that you're studying. Humans tend to have their memory of newly learned knowledge in a matter of days or weeks unless they consciously review the learned material. So that's a really important fact. Reviewing is really important. You can't just look at the material one time or hear it one time or just get it out of class and then expect to remember it. We have to keep reviewing the information to help ourselves keep from forgetting those key points. And flashcards can be a great way to do that as well. And then the Pomodoro technique is, for many people, time is an enemy. We know that we're always short on time. We always have 100 things to do. And we're always racing against the clock to finish assignments and meet deadlines and meet those goals that we've set for ourselves. So the Pomodoro technique teaches you to work with time instead of struggling against it. It's a revolutionary time management system, and it is at once deceptively simple to learn and life-changing to use. So that's really great information for all of us. It's essential to the Pomodoro technique is the notion that taking short scheduled breaks while working eliminates the running on fumes feeling we tend to get when we've pushed ourselves too hard. And I was actually just communicating with someone in the chat about this. And it's going to be important to set limits for yourself that you know you can achieve. But you want to first identify your task. So what are you actually going to be doing, or what's your focus? Set the timer to 25 minutes. Work until the timer goes off. Then you give yourself a short break of about 3 to 5 minutes. What I like to do in those breaks is to maybe walk around, do some stretches, get a cold drink of water, and that's going to help you kind of reset and be able to refocus. And then after a set of 4 Pomodori, you take a longer break of like 15 to 30 minutes. So you'll just be more successful. You'll be able to accomplish a lot more. And you're going to improve your mental agility by doing these 5 basic steps.
And can I just interject that Pomodoro is a sauce that's made traditionally with tomatoes, so that's why it's nicknamed the Pomodoro technique. I just thought that was cool and wanted to interject. Okay, I'll be quiet.
And the other 2 R's of the 4 R's are relax and recharge. So you want to rewind and review, and then relax and recharge. It's proven that we have to take a break. You can't push yourself until your breaking point because it's not going to be good for you. It's not going to be good for anyone around you. And you're not going to find yourself being as successful as you would if you gave yourself that break that you most definitely deserve and have earned. So definitely remember to do that. A great tip that I always share too when we're talking about like proctored exams is you're covering a lot of information. So study, but study up until the night before you're going to take the exam, then give yourself a break. I have learned through my own experiences and through some reviews I've done, that if you cram up until the last second of you, let's say, taking an exam, we tend to remember the very last thing that we read or the very last thing that we heard, however you might be studying. So if you take that break, you're going to give yourself time to reset and you're going to actually process the information a lot better.
And so, as strange as this may seem, there's also a lot of research and evidence to support that how we dress, really subconsciously plays a significant role in how well we're studying and how well we're doing with writing papers and writing and completing exams as well. So, as tempting as it may be when we are engaged in online courses. So, when you're sitting down and you're writing a paper, or you're participating in a webinar, or you are, studying or taking that multiple choice exam, make sure that you are comfortable, but not too comfortable either. So you want to refrain from wearing pajamas or extra comfy clothes because this sends a signal to us, to our subconscious, that that we don't necessarily need to be alert when really that's exactly what we want to be. Another technique is stick post-it notes where they will frequently be seen. So if you're doing something like learning new vocabulary words or important research, important statistics, the most important points or summaries or outlines that you have for an upcoming exam, if you stick them on post-it notes and put them on your refrigerator, your bathroom mirror, on your ceiling, as someplace where they're going to frequently be seen, having that frequent exposure is going to improve your overall recall and recognition skills. And finally, there are so many apps that are available. I think this image is actually a little bit outdated. And Sarah and I are learning from you this evening, so thank you for sharing your ideas with us. But definitely check out apps that are available on smartphones and for computers and probably if we tried to come up with a comprehensive list today of the best apps, that list might change tomorrow. So definitely find what works for you. Um, this slide says student success career for 2018. I don't know what happened there. Sorry. So social studies, we are all in this together. So there's a really great quote by William Glasser that we wanted to share with you, and it goes like this. This one is not exactly science, but of everything that we learn, 10% comes from what we read, 20% from what we hear, 30% from what we see, 50% from what we see and hear, 70% what we discuss with others as we synthesize that information, as we take it and make it our own, and we put it into our own words and explain it in our own way. 80% of what we experience, and 95% of what we teach to others. So on that note, it's a really good idea to try to find an online study buddy, someone that, of course you want to be very appropriate in these relationships. You don't want to, be collaborating with another student, obviously, and sharing exam questions or reviewing or writing each other's papers. Of course, obviously that would be inappropriate. But it is a really great idea to be able to connect with other students that are currently taking the same courses that you're in, or students that have previously completed that course, and ask them for their guidance, their motivation, their support. This is also a really great way to hold yourself accountable. On the Penn Foster Community website, which at this moment is taken away, but we understand it's coming back bigger and better than ever next month. In fact, I think we're still on schedule for May. Is that, Sarah, am I correct? Is it coming back sometime in May, I think?
I believe so. Yep, I haven't heard any different.
Um, so when it comes back, I believe there's going to be opportunities for, for students to be able to connect with other students in terms of geography, whether it means that you're meeting up and studying with your study buddy in person. If that works, if not, certainly go ahead and find a study buddy online as well. So, sometimes we can do this through Facebook groups or through the community as well. So definitely take advantage of that as a resource. Sarah, do you want to, we do have, we're almost out of time, but if anyone has questions that you want to share with us or study tips, and Sarah, do you want to, if I know you've been monitoring the questions box as we've been talking this evening. I guess our final thought for all of you is, again, the ideas that we shared with you. We know that 100% of our ideas are not going to work for 100% of you all, and that's okay. But we're hoping that, that you found some suggestions and techniques and tips and strategies that will help you to keep calm and study on. And these are some of our references. But Sarah, is there anything that you wanted to extract from the questions box, or?
There was one question that came in before, and I hope that some of the ideas that we shared have answered your question. But one student asked, "How can you stay focused in online school?" And we understand that it can be really difficult. It's easy to get distracted, especially by life. And so we're hopeful that these tips and tricks and techniques, especially like those fun ones, like the gummy bears and the Pomodoro technique, setting those goals for yourself and holding yourself accountable and rewarding yourself. Remember, you're working really hard. And so you need to reward yourself and take some time for yourself as well. You can't work full steam 100% of the time. So I hope that those tips will help you as well.
And we have other tips and techniques and strategies. Sarah and I are both very active on Pinterest. So you can find us there. Our username is Penn Foster Sarah or Penn Foster Katie. We have a board called Tips for Student Success. So check us out there as well. We have upcoming sessions tomorrow, Wednesday, April 17th, time management, setting priorities that work, tips for navigating the Penn Foster Virtual Library, 5 habits of successful entrepreneurs and enterprisers, my goodness, and at 6 p.m. interviewing with ease. So we hope that this session was helpful to you. We definitely love hearing from you all. There's a survey that's going to be generated as soon as the session ends, and we encourage your honest feedback. We are not seeking gratuitous compliments or praise, but we are learning from you and from your feedback as well. So if there's something you especially liked about the session, please let us know. If you have recommendations for us about other things that we can include or ways that we can improve our webinars, please definitely share that with us as well. But we really enjoyed our time with you all this evening, and oh, good. We're so glad. Very good. Oh, you're welcome. You're very welcome. Sarah, I'm going to end there. I just want to say thank you to you for your time this evening. I know it was difficult for you to get away. Sarah's been exemplifying how important it is to be able to say to family, this is my work time and I need to do my work. I know your cute kids are running around there somewhere. So thank you for your time this evening.
Yes. Thank you for everything. And thanks
Thank,
everybody for joining us.
have a great night, everybody. Take care.